Edina Brown, owner of The Art of Connection. With a collective 15 years of experience in public office, leadership training, and nonprofit board governance, Edina uses adult learning techniques, case studies, and stories of challenge and growth to help audiences learn the skill of building connections to improve their career, business, and personal relationships. Welcome, Edina, to She Leads Boldly. Welcome to She Leads Boldly, the podcast for faith-driven women navigating high-stakes leadership without compromising what matters most. I am Sharika Sanders, your host, mentor, and kingdom business leader. Here, we embrace bold leadership rooted in purpose, not pressure. This space is for the woman who refuses to choose between faith and ambition, family and fulfillment, impact and rest. Each week, you'll hear powerful conversations, practical strategies, and spirit-led wisdom to help you advocate for yourself, lead with integrity, and rise without burnout. If you're ready to lead boldly, live faithfully, and never settle for less than what God has promised, you're in the right place. Thank you so much, Edina, for being here with us today, imparting or agreeing to impart your wisdom on us as wives and mothers and women of faith. Sometimes we find it challenging to either prioritize ourselves, either to say no, either to struggle between how we serve our career and that calling, how we serve our family, and how we even serve ourselves. And so I know that you have a very particular area of expertise, and we'll get to that. But first, I just definitely want to say thank you for just being here and agreeing to impart your wisdom on us today.
Oh, thank you, Sharika. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so, in speaking of how we tend to prioritize different things ahead of us, and sometimes I will say, sometimes other things are needed. It's a game that we play. For example, I had a meeting yesterday that I had to take or that I was scheduled to take, but then my child fractured her foot. And so that was a priority over other things.
Yeah.
And so I want to really get your take and your opinion when we think about not only just prioritizing, but how we can best communicate, whether it's I need me time right now, or whether it's this thing over here has to take precedence over sometimes maybe even my family or my household, because that is something that I know as a mother and previously in corporate America, and honestly, even with my own business now, sometimes I have that guilt of, oh, I put work before this thing, or, oh, I put, maybe I'm spending too much time on the family things and all the other things, and I need to be focusing a little bit more time on my business. And so I would love to know how I can best communicate to the other parties to make sure that we're all on the same page, to make sure that I'm being fair and honest, to make sure that I'm still representing my best self. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think the best thing to do is to just tell people when you're done. That's what I've learned to do over the years. I mean, I don't know how old your children are, but I have one that's 18 now and one that's 13. So they're older, but I had a lot of years where I just did everything for everyone, and
Yes.
rightly so. I mean, like, I feel like that's what I was supposed to do. So I'm okay with that.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Even now I do that. Even now, like last week was very busy and I was running around doing other things for the people in my family and didn't get
Right.
as much time to do my own things. That happens sometimes. I think
Yes.
understanding that's going to happen naturally.
Right.
But communicating is just saying, like, I say things like kitchen is closed, or I say, okay, at 9 o'clock, I'm off the clock. And then I
Yes.
just go to my room and I watch my little show or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That's it. And again, it depends on how little your kids are. If there's urgent matters or if they're very little, that might not work, right? You might have to stop your me time moment and go back to what they need. But for the most part, I find that that works. And you kind of have to like train them to understand that, oh, when she said this, like we go here. Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
agree. So mine are 11, 15, and 16.
Okay.
And but I feel like in some ways we work so well now is
Mhm.
because you do have to train them younger.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't necessarily work from home as much when they were younger like I do now, when I work from home, there were still certain parameters that we set in place. And
Mhm.
so, what about then? And when we talk about how you communicate and even putting those parameters in place, what about in the organizational when it comes to your career and those in your corporate space? For example, when I was in corporate, whenever we had to interview a mother, there was already a presumption that she probably can't work late. She probably, and these are the things that I would hear, others saying, oh, she probably can't work late because she'll have to go get the kids. Oh, she may not be able to work on the weekends because of, all of these other things. And then sometimes it is what it is. But in a corporate setting, how would, as a wife, as a mother who has all of these other priorities, how would you say we can best, and then maybe you're saying that as I'm saying this, communicate what we need from them, as well as setting those boundaries to make sure we get what we need?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think unfortunately in interviews when decision makers are looking at what a woman may or may not be available to do, that's discrimination. That's another story, right? Because we can't decide that because a woman is a mother or not a mother that she might eventually
Hmm.
be one. There's a lot of people that opt out of having children. So that's like not a great assumption to make. But what I will say is in terms of being a wife, a mother, and having a lot of different roles and being in the workforce, I think it's pretty simple to be direct about what you can and can't be available for. And you just say that, and say it proudly, not apologetically. You just say, tomorrow I'm going to need to, check out at 5 o'clock, the normal time, but
Yeah.
I'm available a little later on Thursday, or you know what I mean? Or I'm available a little later next Monday. So I think being very clear about it and not apologizing, not going into too
Hmm.
much detail is also important because people will maybe make assumptions that it has something to do with your family, but that's not something you need to disclose either.
Hmm.
Keep it professional and, maybe if you have a really good casual personal relationship with someone you work with, maybe that's okay to say. But I find that the less information you can give in those situations,
Yes.
the better, because people can maybe use it against you later and say, oh, you
Right.
left early because your kid's this time or your kid got sick.
Right.
Like I said, there's times when you have to, right? If there's an emergency, you definitely need to explain, I've got to leave right now. My daughter just fractured her foot. But
Hmm.
for the most part, just saying this is when I can be available.
Hmm.
And I can also give more time at a later date. Yeah.
I One of the things I'm hearing consistently in your message is boundaries,
Hmm.
establishing those boundaries for yourself. And as a wife, as a mother, as a woman of faith who, so before even coming into entrepreneurship, I was the person I would never have a business. I would never be an entrepreneur. I'm not a risk taker. Some people are meant for corporate
Hmm.
America. I'm W-2 all day. Like that's who I am.
Hmm.
And I was proud in that. And so now that I knew things like, and I'm shifting a little bit here, I knew things like networking was important in the corporate space. It looks a little bit differently, not much, a little bit differently than entrepreneurship. But I would like to know how, when we think about boundaries and different things like that, how do we still establish those connections with, the managers, the people, the teams, other people in whether it's in our corporate space or in our entrepreneurial space? How do we establish those connections with those people while still maintaining truth to ourselves, while still being women of faith, while still having, these other external obligations that we also have going on?
Okay. So I guess I'm wondering what if you can expand on that a little bit. You're saying how do we network with people but not have boundaries or
And
have
maintain the boundaries. Oh, so I'll give an
boundaries?
example.
Okay.
This is just was just me. So in corporate, I was definitely someone who would network a little bit. I would go to whether it was within my organization, I was heavy on that. But outside of like meeting with other people in my industry, but outside of the office, I did a little bit of that as well. But there was always this thing of, okay, when I make these connections, when I meet these people, when I'm networking with these people, you know, do I share that, oh, I have three children at home? Or
Okay, gotcha.
do I let it be known that, you know, where wear my faith on my sleeve, so to speak? Do
Mm.
I, so I know there are boundaries, but I guess how do we have those conversations, still being our authentic self, but also maintaining those boundaries?
Yeah. I think I always err on the side of just what level I am with a person. Like if I'm just meeting somebody for
Mm-hmm.
the first time,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to say I have kids. Sometimes that can be an icebreaker because
Mm-hmm.
your kids are the same age as a other person's
Yeah.
children. It's okay to say you're married, all these other things. You don't maybe have to say like I'm God-fearing, but you can say, "Oh,
Right.
I go to church on Sunday," or you, I think there's just ways to sprinkle in those tidbits about myself, right? That information, but not go any really deeper. Like, this is the church I go to. You should join it. Like, I think sometimes organically that happens. There's times where I
Yes.
meet somebody and
Right.
organically that has happened, but or we're in a situation that seems very similar. And so then we end up, divulging things a little bit more. But I think for the most part, the typical, like, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Oh, I like to go boating with my kids, or I like to, go antiquing with my husband. So that's giving some information, but you're also just leaving some room for other parts of a conversation where people go, oh, I like boating too, or I like antiquing. And so you can incorporate both. But yeah, I think it's always important to remember that people at work are not our friends. And I work somewhere where people they hated when I said that. But I think that works for some people. I have become friends with people that I work with, but that is not the ultimate goal, I don't think. Maybe for some people.
Yeah.
But I think what ends up happening is lines can get blurred, or just like in your normal everyday life, you can have rifts with friends, you can have misunderstandings. But if now that's at work, it creates more tension for you and the people you work with. So I now, and if you would have asked me this maybe 10, 20 years ago, I might not have agreed. But now I just err on the side of friendliness, politeness, share a little bit. If someone asks something you don't want to answer, be like, oh, well, what about you? You just kind of like throw it back to them,
Yeah.
but just always in a polite way. I think there's a polite way to say something or to omit information too,
Yeah.
and that's a learned skill. It takes time to learn how to do it.
I agree with we're not at work to make friends. Oh my goodness. Like I used to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And it can come off a little bit harsh, but we're not. We're there to do a job. And if, which more often than not, a friendship develops from that, then absolutely. But
Mhm.
that's from being your authentic self. That's from setting your
Yeah.
boundaries. That's from showing up as, who you truly are. You can build those relationships, make those connections, you know, even take it outside of the job if that's,
Yeah.
you see fit.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of people do get caught up in, does such and such like me? And
Yeah.
it's more so, do they respect me? Can we
Right.
work together? Can we be cordial? Can we build a professional relationship? I tell, the story about once how someone referred me for an opportunity and I didn't even think the lady liked me.
Mm.
And so I was really surprised when the person told me like, "Oh, we got a a raving reference
Oh.
about you." And I was like, "Really? Do you mind sharing who?" And they told me, and I was like, in my head, like, "Really?" But it was because of how I showed up. Even if
Mhm.
she, and I still don't think she would have liked me that much, but even if she didn't like me as a person, she couldn't deny how I showed up for myself
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
my work ethic and how I did all of that. And so I feel even though, in talking about boundaries and talking about being true to yourself and all of these things, I think all of these things play a part in how you establish those connections and build those relationships, whether it continues to be a corporate and we strictly are, if it's not about work, we're not talking, or if it bleeds outside of that into, your personal life. I can say there are friends that I have now who I've had for years who we started off working together because we spend so much time in that space. It
Mm.
definitely helps to
Yeah, it
make the
does.
best of that space and those people that you are with. And there was a comment I'm looking at, a comment that you made here,
Mm.
and it said that faith got me through some of the toughest years I faced as an elected leader.
Mhm, mhm.
And I feel like that sentence is just heavy overall because I'm
Mm.
sure many of us listening have faced some tough decisions, had to make some tough decisions, whether it was for ourselves or the people that we worked with. And you want to make sure that your faith is forefront, but you also want to make sure that how do I say this? Your faith is forefront, but also that you're maintaining, like being sensitive to the people that you're working with, I'll say, because everybody is not on the same path as you. If when it comes to your
Yeah.
faith or your
Yeah.
spirituality or even religion, all
Mhm.
of that. And so I would love to hear more about how your faith was able to get you through and
Mhm.
were you able to rely on any of those relationships that you may have built in your corporate space or in your professional space to help you through that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a spiritual person. I wouldn't say religious, but
Yes.
in that time, I dealt with a lot of discrimination and aggressiveness from my peers in politics that, locally, not really elsewhere else, in the state or region. And it was just, we had differing views, very similar to how we see politics play out today, just very polarizing. And so that was what was going on even in local politics where I was. And so yeah, there were lots of times where I felt alone. I was alone. My votes, I was alone. My thoughts, my perspective, the way I looked, I was the
Mm-hmm.
one in pretty much every realm. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had to lean into like praying and just calming myself down because I would get very frustrated and I didn't really express it outwardly. I made sure I was just professional at all times, but internally I could be fuming at some of the things that I would hear because they were so discriminatory and so egregious. And so I just had to learn how to, you know, just keep a very stoic face, I guess. And then when I get home, I'd be, yapping and talking
Yeah.
about it. And networking helped so much, like any beyond what I would have expected because at that time, even before I got elected, I met some of the nicest people that were in that space, even some of them that didn't end up getting elected. When I did, there were people that they were running for office during the same time. They didn't win, I won, but we still remain friends to this day. So that was, a pretty great thing. And that fortified me because those were the people that spoke up for me when things happened. There were people that rallied around me. I could call them and vent and they understood. So I'll say that was really the nicest thing during that time was meeting those people. And I think praying, brought those people into my life, so that way I could have
Yeah.
the strength and just somebody to vent to,
Yes.
which was needed often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
It's sometimes we downplay how much of an impact certain people can have. And honestly, I feel like sometimes we don't even realize it, like, oh, they're, a nice person to work with, a nice person to be around, whatever the case may be. And then you may have something that happens, and that person that you never thought steps up. And it's like, oh,
Mm.
well, because of your presence, I was able to make it through this, or because of your words of encouragement, or because of your kindness, all of those little things.
Yeah.
I don't want to say little as in minimizing, but things
Mm.
that we sometimes overlook. I was able to make it through this particular phase. And
Mm.
so, again, thanking you for your time, but to kind of wrap this all up
Mm.
in talking about boundaries and talking about showing up as your true self. I feel like sometimes we overuse authenticity a little bit. Showing up as your as your true self, and which to me means saying and being and doing what's comfortable for you, not feeling like you have to make adjustments to fit in with whatever space that you're in. And so being able to show up that way, being able to build relationships, because we're all building relationships, whether it's in our business, whether it's in our organization that we work for, in our day-to-day lives. We're building the relationship. I'm building relationships with the volleyball parents. It's building those relationships, but in building those, making sure that you stay true to your God, making sure that you stay true to your faith, making sure that you stay true to those things that are priorities for you, and not really making adjustments to appease other people.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate your guidance. I appreciate your legacy of leadership
Thanks.
and how you understand that and all the different facets and ways that we show up, that it may be family, it may be career, it may be me
Mhm.
that needs the
Yeah.
priority in this moment. But how we communicate that and how we set those boundaries to begin with. We started off talking about kids, but same in corporate. How we set those boundaries to begin with our kids, with the people that we work with. That's what helps to build those relationships and establish those connections, so that when we do face our toughest times, some really hard years, or forced to make some really hard decisions, we have that support there for whatever space that is, whatever space that we're in.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you for showing up as you.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes. And we'll make sure that everyone can get in touch with Miss Edina Brown, because I want to make sure that if you all have questions, if you're struggling trying to figure out how do I balance these things, how do I build up, how do I show up, even how do I show up in this space, or I'm used to, I work from home for the last 15 years and now I'm transitioning to a space where I have to go back into the office. How do I establish those connections? How do I build those relationships, but also maybe stay true to my introverted self or my extroverted self and not be too much too fast? So please make sure that you're reaching out to Edina, asking those questions, seeing how she can help you show up as that best person in whatever that space is, that professional space that you're in, and making sure that you're able to establish not only maintaining your boundaries, but establishing those relationships so that you build lifelong connections, whether personally or professionally.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharika. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, until next time. Hey, friend, if this episode stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Make sure you subscribe to She Leads Boldly so you never miss an episode. And let's stay connected. Join our growing community of faith driven powerhouse women where you'll find real talk, encouragement, and tools to fuel your journey. Oh, and I've created something special just for the bold, faith driven women like you, an ebook, When You Know His Name. Discover identity, intimacy, and the power of prayer through the names of God. This ebook is designed to equip and encourage you to lead with clarity, courage, and conviction in every space God assigns you to. Available now on Amazon. And if you're ready for deeper clarity, I would love to personally walk with you. I offer a one-on-one session called Your Path to Purpose and Power, and it's to help you break through the overwhelm and realign with what God is actually calling you to in this season. Whether it's burnout, boundaries, or fresh vision, you don't have to figure it out alone. All links are in the show notes. Oh, and one last thing. I would love to hear from you. What questions are you carrying this season? What topics would serve your walk, your work, your womanhood right now? Send me a message or an email because this podcast is for you, and I want every episode to speak directly to where you are. Remember, you don't have to choose between your faith, your family, and the calling on your life. God's grace makes room for it all. So until next time, stay anchored in purpose, covered in grace, and always ready to rise. Talk soon, friend.